So today what we're going to do is we're going to study a thing called multiplication of matrices, but then we're also going to study the concept of a thing called Markov chains. So when we're multiplying matrices, here is what we need to make sure of. We need to make sure that we multiply the rows by the columns. So the rows of the first by the columns of the second, which means that this has to be true. The rows of the first must equal the columns of the second. All right, of the second, right? And what we're essentially doing is we're just multiplying the rows of the first by everything by the stuff in the column. And what we end up doing is we just add them and add. All right, so now let me give you an example. Let's say that I have the row matrix -3, 0, and then I have the column matrix 2, 8. So here's how you get your answer. Well, you go, -3 times 2 plus 0 times 8. And that creates a simple matrix for us. And that final matrix is given by, -6 plus 8 is -6. So your final answer for your matrix is -6. You'll notice, here's what I want you to notice as we go along for today's work. When we multiply these two matrices, let's say I have a 1 by 2, right? And then we're going to multiply it by a 2 rows by 1 column. Then what happens is my resultant is always going to be this. Is going to always have the following. The resultant matrix will be the rows of the first by the columns of the second. You'll see what I mean by that. Now remember, I told you the rows of the first must always equal the columns of the second. So let's see, what would happen if I gave you a problem that looks like this? So this is example B. So imagine I have the matrix, which is, let's say it's 1, 2. So this is a matrix here that is a 1 by 2. And this one is a 3 by 1. You'll notice something weird. You go and match the first element with the corresponding element in the column of the second, and you'll notice that they match. But when we get to the third calculation that involves the 5 that's here, you'll notice that they can't be multiplied because they don't have a matching number of columns from the first, matching with the number of rows from the second. Now, if that doesn't happen, then you can't multiply them, right? Okay. All right, and that's it. So now let's stop messing with you. Let's see what would happen if we had something that was able to multiply. So imagine I give you a problem that I say evaluate. So imagine if I give you these two matrices, right? I have matrix A, which is a 2 by 3, All right. And B, which is a matrix that is a 3 by 2. Now, I told you originally that these two matrices always had to, if we were multiplying, these inner matrix columns and row numbers must be the same in order to compute the final answer. Now, the resultant matrix, I told you, was always going to be a combination of the basic values of the rows from the first times the columns from the second. So we end up with a resultant matrix, which is 2 by 2. So let's see how we go about filling this. All right, so to get the first element in our box, we call that A11, right? Now, what we have to do is we're going to literally take all of these three numbers with these column numbers in B. We multiply them together. All right, now I'm going to actually write it out in yellow. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. And all you're going to do is go 2 times -1 plus -3 times 4 plus 1 times 5. So one more time, 2 times -1 plus -3 times 4 plus 1 times 5. And then put your answer in. And when you do that, you're going to get the following. You're going to get 9. Okay, so now let's do that again for our next set. Okay. All right, so we got 9 for our first number. Okay, so now for the second element in the first row, so it's kind of like as you're multiplying by the first row into everything in the second, all you keep doing is keep filling the rows until you're done. So now I'm going to do this in red. So we're going to go this by all of these. Okay, so we're literally going to have 2 times 6 plus -3 times 3 plus 1 times 7. Okay, so what that gives me is 10. So we end up with 10. So now, when we start the next row, i.e., so we finished the first row with everything in the second within the second matrix. So now what we want to do is construct the second row of information right here. So in order to do that, we're going to have to take, for the first bracket here, we're going to go and fill for the first position in our second matrix. What we have to do is we're literally just going to go and take all of this and multiply by all of that. Okay? Now, in doing so, you end up with -4 times 1 plus -2 times 4 plus 0 times 5. And that gives us -4. And so now let's do our final column. So in order to do our final column, we're going to be putting our information into this box right here. So here's what. So in order to get that last position, you're literally going to do this. You're going to take this row and then multiply by this column. Okay. Now in doing so, you're going to get -4 times 6 plus -2 times 3 plus 0 times 7, which gives us a final answer of -30. Now, all this means is that we're going to be doing a little bit of practice with multiplication. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed with it. We're going to do a little bit of practice, then we'll do some practice with a thing called Markov chains. and do some of the multiplication problems that I have left for you online.